All right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the September 26th user group meeting. Big thanks to everybody joining us this morning. Big thanks to Kim for getting us kicked off and hosted, and also to Barb and Tony for joining us up here as panelists. As Kim mentioned before the recording started, Barb, Tony, and Kim work very hard behind the scenes to look at questions and answer questions and things like that, and also occasionally pop in if we need to cover something with the group. So really appreciate Kim and Barb and Tony for helping us out this morning and being on the call, and appreciate all you guys joining us as well. Let me pop over to the agenda for today. Really release review focused for some things that are coming up. We'll talk about important links. And if you've been coming to these user group meetings the last couple months, you should be getting very used to me talking about these links, but always valuable to repeat that, show you guys those links. We're going to talk about some release highlights. I mentioned really starting in August and into last month, talking about some high priority issues that are very critical to us that we are tracking. I'll give you a little update on those issues and how those things are coming along. And then we're going to do a couple of demo items today. One around release item, and then two other things I just wanted to go over as we've been out and talking to folks, and just some things we wanted to review with you guys from a demonstration perspective. So excited to have all those things up and getting to run through some things in Eva this morning as well. Shifting out, let's dig right into the first area here. These are the important links. I've talked about these the last several meetings, but I'm just kind of leaving this slide in there. I think it's a great resource for not only you guys who are here today in the bug meeting, but any of your procurement staff that's out there. The two items are where our release notes are located. If you happen to miss the meeting last month, this is something new. Tony's really handling this for us and putting this together, which we really appreciate. But if you go to on the Eva homepage, the resources drop down, you'll see an Eva release notes link. This is the direct link to the Eva release notes. And since we've been on our new platform going all the way back to November, you can see the notes and a brief summary of everything that's gone into the new platform, be it a bug fix, be it an enhancement, whatever we're doing. You can go back and get a summary of that from this location. And then really pushing these hard as well. This is another initiative that Tony did for us with our team, putting tips together from our functional leads. And this is just something, maybe around requisitioning, around sourcing, around contracting, around reports, around anything, something that's helpful, something that might be unique or new. Just a great site to go visit. We literally get a new tip out on that site once a week. We're doing one a week. Now, they're not always buyer related, or not. They're not always purchasing related from the government side of things. Some of them are supplier related. So there is a supplier tip section as well. And if you go over to the supplier training area, which you have access to, you can see the tips on the supplier side as well, if you're interested. But again, I love highlighting these. Just a great area, great resource for you guys, you and your staff, to keep up with what's going on in Eva. And, from a tip perspective, maybe something helpful that'll help make Eva that much easier to use for you in your shop. Now, I went over these last month, but I decided I just kind of wanted to go over them again. I'm not going to demo any of this. If you're curious about any of these specifically, I did do a little bit of demoing and navigating in our August meeting. But this really August, we had a nice run of things in August, and I just wanted to kind of get through these again, quickly talk about some items that are coming up this week in September that'll go into our September release, which you guys won't see till the end of the week, going into Friday and then potentially Monday when these things are done. It's a couple smaller items, a lot of behind the scenes things going on in September. But again, I wanted to kind of go through the August release real quick. In our sourcing area, adding the supplier registration status when you're analyzing and awarding. We think that's very helpful. So you can, make sure you're awarding to active suppliers. From a sourcing perspective too, when you're finishing up, building your solicitation, just clarifying that you're not only sending that out, but making sure that button, it's just a button change, but hopefully helps for usability where you're sending and publishing. The two big favorite ones, and I did demo this last month, Kim and Dave Foster worked to get the recorded copy of the user group meeting posted to the EVA webpage. If you want to go check those out, adding the created date to the browse requisition screen and adding the order date to the browse PO screen. Very excited to do that. In your requisitions for confirming orders, and when you're doing a line item mass edit on a confirming order, allowing you to backdate the delivery date there. Something else we did. Purchase orders, allowing change orders on purchase orders after contract expiration dates. And part of our demo today, we're going to look at some contract stuff. And then for those of you that manage approval rules, maybe have data management delegated to you, adding some information to that approval rules table to help you very quickly see the rules that you have built and what they impact. The dollar amounts, that's what we're talking about with threshold there. And then the requisition types that are impacted by those rules. So it makes it a little bit easier to determine what the rule is and what the dollar range is when you're doing that. So that, again, I know we talked about those last month, but really wanted to leave those up for a quick review here today before we get into our demonstration and before we talk about some September release items. So again, lots of things going on as we continue to do some things behind the scenes in EVA. So a big release for some technical things that we're doing. Some highlights as we drift into September, just kind of two things for you here. I'm going to show you this user security one. For those of you that are not using federated identity management, so you're not, doing single sign-on to get into EVA, and maybe you're still using, or not maybe, you are using your user ID and a password and keying that in, the ability to toggle the password visibility. So that may not have as big of an impact for you guys in the buying community, but certainly our supplier community does not have single sign-on. So for our suppliers that are using a user ID and password to log in, for that individual login, the one time they come in, the ability to toggle that password visibility so they can see what they're typing and making sure they're not making a mistake when they type that password in. So that's a handy thing, and I'll show you guys that real quick. And then just a quick change to the supplier browse when you can even, your requisitioners. There's a supplier section in EVA, and you can go and browse the supplier data, adding in the tax name or the W-9 name into the supplier search results. So you're really getting, a full view of that supplier. The supplier name itself, how it's listed in EVA, but then also the name that's coming off of the W-9. So that's being returned in the search results. We never hid the W-9 name, but if you wanted to see that for supplier, you actually had to physically click into the supplier account to pull that up. So that's really, again, a big release from our perspective and lots of fixes and changes and things that we're doing. But from a user impact perspective, these are the two big ones that are coming in. So that's kind of September for us. And then again, we're going to demo some stuff here after I get through this next slide. Talked about these the last couple of months at the user group, and I wanted to get you an update on how everything's going and doing for some of our high priority issues. Good news that I can share just right off the top. We haven't had any movement in our schedule at this point, which is good. We're staying on schedule for all these items that we're very concerned about, and we're a high priority for our team. And two of them are complete, which we're very excited about. The combined two-step, which was an update we did to sourcing to allow a combined two-step solicitation to be issued. That is completed. and in production. There are quick reference guides out there around that process and how to do that. But the combined two-step is complete and in production and rolling right along. So we're excited to kind of check that off the list from a technical release perspective. For those of you that this impacts, and there's likely a couple of you on this call that potentially have to do this for your organization, there is a General Assembly requirement if you have capital construction projects that completed in the previous fiscal year, doing reporting for that. And that we collect those through a very simple form that's in EVA. And if you should have been given access to that, you should have been contacted if you were responsible for that. If this is confusing to you and you're like, what is capital project reporting? I might have to do that. Please reach out to your account executive and they'll gladly get you information on that. But we're delighted to get that functionality in place as well. Lots of reporting and things going on at this point in time. So, and that reporting period, I'm pretty sure stays open through October. But again, if that's something that is a responsibility of yours, you should have been contacted directly. And if you have any questions, please reach out to your AE. But again, excited to get that launched and start collecting that data into EVA. Some other things that are going on and part of our September release, but I wanted to talk about it here. So really, user impact things, it's not was just 2. You really had 4 things that were impacting you. Little fix we're doing to P-card approvals. We had a little gap that was identified and closing that out to make sure we're in complete compliance with our P-card approvals. That's going to be wrapped up here at the end of September. And then a user deactivation process. And again, this isn't a new process. This isn't new. This is a fix, allowing the system to do a 90-day deactivation for us, for our users that have not interacted with the system in 90 days. And again, this is just on the buying side. This doesn't impact our supplier community. We know we have suppliers that may not access EVA every 90 days, but certainly from a government user, a buyer user perspective, kind of some 90-day rules and meeting some security requirements for us. That is, and I even think that's tested and we're all set with that process. So those are 2 items, the P-card approval, kind of closing a bug that we had there, as well as this 90-day user deactivation. Those are set to go in September as well. So that's in addition to the slide that you just saw previously for some September items that are coming. These last 3, very important for us and some high priority items, our requisition approval, adding in some additional logic to allow for some potential additional custom approvals at the end of the process. This is particularly impacting those of you that use our queue management function, allowing that to happen. That's still at this point slated for November. I know some design work has gone into that and, kind of getting the path forward on that to make sure we can keep that on track and that is moving forward. PO integration denials for those of you that do real-time integration, very, very important fix to keep when the ERP legitimately denies a transaction, getting a fix in for that you can set that requisition back to composing, make the change and reintegrate that transaction if there is a denial from the ERP. So this is a big deal as well for those organizations that do real-time integration. That is also still tracking to November to get that fixed. And then the last one here, speaking of queue management, some additional oversight and dashboards that will allow our managers and the folks doing the assigning out of our queue management functionality, some additional oversight and a better look and view about who did the assignment, who has assignments, the age of those assignments, really, really allowing those managers to have and the folks doing this type of oversight and assigning much, much, much better insight into who has what transactions, how old they are. We really feel like there's going to be some great improvements there. Now, the November date on here is when we're expecting that to go into production. I'm hoping, and we appear to still be on schedule for this, in October, we'll have that information into UAT and we'll be able to start showing you that. So I've got my fingers crossed for our October user group meeting that this could be one of the demo items to let you guys see that queue management functionality. And if it's not something that you're using currently, it could be something you might be interested in using to manage your workload. So we'll hopefully get a nice look at that as part of our October meeting. So that's just some updates, kind of a recap of the August release, a look into the September release, which again, those items kind of towards the end of September, those are going in Thursday evening. So for those of you that are working on Friday, you'll see these changes on Friday. And then, certainly depending on what's going on with your Friday, you'll see those things starting the beginning of next week. So kind of those 4 items to September, and then the rest of our high priority items that are on there. And as you begin to see some of these items roll off, our team will be adding additional high priority items to the list. So you can get, hoping to share with you guys kind of that long-term vision and some of the things, we're looking down the road, to enhance or fix or make a process better. So, stay with us with the user group meeting as we continue to go through and update those things. So next, the time we have remaining, I want to go ahead and go in and do a little demoing. And we're going to cover 3 things today that I want to look at. Password visibility. And that's the new thing that's coming out. I just want to show you guys that, not only so you can see it. And again, if you're using single sign-on at your organization, this has a pretty low impact, but it could be helpful to any suppliers you're in communication with. Certainly an improvement that they're going to see, because again, our suppliers don't have single sign-on, and they are absolutely using a user ID and password to log into the system. So I'm going to show you this. It's a very helpful usability fix that we've put in. I want to then spend some time, we'll shift out of logging into Eva, and I want to talk about requisitions and P cards and how we get a P card on a transaction. Now, again, I mentioned we're fixing an approval gap there. It's a little bit of a unique scenario, but in the grand scheme of things, there are 3 ways to get a purchase card on a requisition. And I want to make sure you see all 3 of those methods, and we're going to go through that today. And then the last one, and for those of you our procurement directors that are on this particular user group, I know a message had gone out from Mike O'Malley, our Chief Procurement Officer, to a big group of individuals about some meetings coming up in October, and a lot of the focus kind of going to contract. And how we have contracts loaded into Eva. That will probably be, depending on how things shake out and which direction we get pointed in, certainly something we'll talk about in October user group meeting. I think you'll see that some of the contract discussion will also be a focus at the forum in November. But what I want to do today from a demo perspective is talk about, for your end users, ordering off a contract and the various ways you can do that. Just have a quick look at that. So I'm going to do my classic, and you guys know if you've been with me for this, I'm going to stop that. I'm going to stop that share. Get a big picture of me here. And I'm going to shift over into Eva. And I will be in UAT today. So there we go. You can see UAT. I've got my UAT screen up there. And we'll go ahead and do some demoing. So I'm already logged into Eva, but hopefully I won't break anything here if I do this. Actually, you know what? Why don't I just log out? It doesn't take very long. So if I was doing, and I'm not going to, when I log back in, I'm going to use my single sign-on. But if I was logging in with my user ID and password, see the little I here? This is that password visibility. So I typed, and you'll notice it's decrypted. So, oh no, maybe I wasn't exactly sure what I typed. I want to confirm that I put my password in correctly. You can very simply hit this and it decrypts it. And you'll notice I typed Eva is awesome there on my password. And then I can hide that and, encrypt, decrypt. All right, from that perspective. So we turn that on. That is in UAT currently. You should see that Friday morning over in production. But again, I know a lot of you use single sign-on. For those of you that don't, I hope this is helpful. That is just your way for that one time being able to confirm that you typed your password correctly. Please follow your password rules and make sure nobody's looking over your shoulder when you type those in. Also, when you hit login here, please know that you are in a secure session and that password will encrypt, and it is sent to our authentication engine to get you logged into Eva. It is an encrypted transaction that's happening. So, no risk from a security perspective. But again, from a usability perspective, and you see this on a lot of websites where a password is required, your ability to decrypt what you've typed to make sure you've typed it properly. But again, pretty neat feature there. All right. So I just wanted to show you that. So let me go ahead and dig into Eva here. And I'm going to use my single sign-on. Get back into UAT. All right. So I am in my UAT environment. And let's talk about getting a P card onto a requisition and then a subsequent order. Let's go ahead and talk about that. And again, 3 methods that this can be done. All right. The first method is if I, as an Eva user, as an Eva requisitioner, if I have a P card, I can add that P card to my profile. So quickest way to do that, log in, my profile. You can click that. Takes you to your profile. Scroll down here just a little bit. And inside this profile, if you scroll down, you've got P card info, and I've got 2 cards loaded. An Oracle upgrade P card when I was doing some testing many moons ago, and then just this Shane's Visa 7890. And again, remember I'm in UAT. It's just crazy data. You can delete a card, you can add a card. Once a card is entered, there's no modifying it. If you get an updated card with a new expiration date or the number changes or things like that, just delete your old card, add a new one. Okay, that's the quickest way to do that. But again, in this case, I've got 2 cards added. You can simply hit add P card to put one in. So what you want to do, if you are a user or someone on your staff is a user and they have a P card, make sure you add it here, again, from my profile. Now, to get that on a requisition, hopefully I have one in draft, and we'll just do one in draft. Okay, so I got this rec here in draft. On a requisition, if I'm keying in a requisition and I get some of this data entered, and to make sure I don't get an error, let me add in some of your required fields here. Say that's what I'm doing. If I go to the P card screen or the P card tab on the left-hand menu. Now I'm a big fan too. While these icons, as you get used to things, maybe you're comfortable with just the pictures. I like to have that expanded so I can actually read the words. But again, go to your P card tab, hit the drop down, and the 2 cards I had on my profile are there to select. Really cool thing about this, with this new platform, I can go and add a card and it's immediately available for me to select and put onto a requisition. All right. So this is one way that I can get a P card onto my requisition, is by selecting the P card. Save as your friend. making sure you save that data. Save is always your friend. So I just saved it. It's mad at me because it wants me to do my allocations, but I'm not going to worry about that right now. I wanted to show you first this method for getting a P card onto your transaction. So you'll notice this is my P card, Shane's Visa 7890. So let's say, and I've left myself in here as the requester. I haven't changed anything. But let's say I'm placing an order for Tony. Tony is requesting. So I can change the requester to Tony Jordan here, right? So I've changed from me to Tony. I'm the creator still, but Tony is my requester. This is the second method for getting a P card on a transaction. And click over here to the P card. And when I hit the drop down, you'll notice I now have Tony's card, and Tony's fake P card. Again, we're in UAT. So I could switch and add Tony to this transaction. Now, by adding Tony as a requester and putting his P card in, Tony is going to end up being an approver on this transaction. So he will come in, he will be able to approve and authorize this transaction because he is the requester and I have used his card. So he will be approving this. So he will be aware that I've put his card onto the transaction. So that is method 2 for adding a P card to a transaction. And again, switching the requester and not using my card, but actually using the card that Tony has added to his profile, putting that on there. And when I submit, Tony's going to be an approver because he is now the requester and I'm using his card. So I will exit this screen. There is a third method for adding a P card to a transaction, and that is done through approvals. So you and your staff, you can have somebody who's a requisitioner get a requisition put together, grabbing their line items, all the things they need to do, hitting submit, and then you can have a user or group of users within the approval flow that have P cards associated with them, and they can add the P card to the transaction as part of the approval workflow. So you'll see here, I have a bunch of stuff in my to-do list, but I'm just going to pick one of these requisitions. I got a purchase requisition. It needs to be approved. So I'm going to grab this requisition, and it's an $11 requisition. I am an approver, so I could reject or approve. But before I review this, or maybe after I review it and I want to go ahead and approve it, I want to put my P card on the transaction. I can then come to the P card screen, hit the drop down, and then my P cards are available from my profile. I can add that P card to the transaction and continue to do my review, whatever I need to do, and hit approve. And then that'll put my P card onto this transaction because I am part of the approval flow. So that is 3 methods to get the P card onto the transaction. Again, in review, adding it to your profile. Let's go ahead and close it out. Adding it to your profile. And then you as the requisitioner, the creator of the requisition, adding it. You as the requisitioner, the second method, switching the requester. And if that requester has a P card loaded to their profile, you can use their P card. Or as part of the approval flow. It hits a certain box. Maybe it's the procurement office. Maybe it's somebody in fiscal, whatever it is. It gets to that individual person or role, and then they can add their P card to the transaction as part of the approval. So again, 3 methods to get a P card in the transaction.
And we're gonna pop in real quick because there's a couple comments over in the chat that I think are worth addressing related to the 3-digit code, the security code that does not transmit
that
with
is correct.
the order.
That is correct.
And that is correct. So if you could give your elevator pitch about that.
All right. So what that 3-digit code is, it's a CCV code, CIV code. There's all sorts of different names to it. And let me get P-card CCV, here it is.
Yeah, CCV, the
Yes.
CVV.
CVV, whatever it is. Yes. So the CVV code is an added security feature that establishes the owner's identity and minimizes the risk of fraud. You will begin to see an upward trend, or you probably already have maybe for years, of vendors asking for the CVV code because it is a system. And I'm reading, by the way, that's why my head is turned, because it is a system requirement through the vendor's merchant bank. Vendors in their merchant bank are required to follow PCI compliance standards, which are designed to ensure that all companies that accept, process, or transmit credit card information maintain a secure environment. And the other thing this is doing for you, that CVV code, if you're not in person with the card and they can't check your ID. So, you go to a retail and I pull a card that has Shane Caldill on it. And I don't know if you guys do this in your personal life, but I actually I don't sign the back of my credit cards. I say, ask for ID. And then technically what your merchant's supposed to do, you run the card and then you should give them identification to say, well, that's Shane Caldill's card. And then I can show like my DMV issued driver's license to confirm it's Shane Caldill. So for e-commerce transactions, including like, in your personal life, when you buy from Amazon or shoot, I don't know, Dick's Sporting Goods or anything like that, because you're not present and physically there with your card, that additional code is what they need to confirm that you're the card owner. Now, you are not allowed by PCI standards, the credit card standards. You are not allowed to store that code or send it like where it's permanently stored, right? It's on a transaction by transaction basis. You need to provide that. And because we're kind of an intermediary, we're not immediately, like if you go to shop with like an Amazon, or Academy Sports, Dick's Sporting Goods, they might ask you for the CVV code during that transaction because they're immediately clearing the card. You're connected directly to their back end and you're immediately clearing the card with them. And that's not really what's happening with EVA. We're moving the card from your buyer account to the supplier account, and the supplier needs to pull the card and run the transaction. So many vendors have implemented changes to their P-card processing system to enable chip and PIN technology. And at that time, when they're changing their systems, the merchant bank may have required additional requirements for the vendor to follow if the card is being manually entered. One of the things, when we run into this with our suppliers and they're asking for the CVV code on EVA transactions, is to reach out to that supplier and say, hey, you're getting a secure transaction. We're handling the upfront security for you so that when you receive a transaction, a P-card transaction from Shane Caldill with the Department of General Services, that we have verified through approval, through the security we have, that the card on that transaction is associated with Shane Caldill and can be charged. So, and a lot of times you can bypass having to enter that CVV code because we've already ensured through the use of EVA that it is a secure transaction and that the transactions you're getting are through that card owner. So again, I know that's outreach to the supplier community, and that tends to be, a little bit of fair amount of work for everybody when that's involved. We have had some success doing that supplier outreach and saying, hey, you're getting a secure transaction from EVA. The CVV code isn't really required because the EVA transaction in and of itself is secure. And sometimes that works, but at least that's an explanation of what is happening on the supplier side and why they're requiring that code. And then also the explanation, we can't store it. So you can't go in and when you add your card to your profile, put the CVV code in. That's illegal. It is supposed to be used for those individual transactions to confirm ownership of the card. It's not a data element that is supposed to be stored. So that's kind of what's going on
Thank you, Shane. And then also just to add, if they're using a third-party processor like Square or something like that, it's because of their card processor that they may still come to you and request it.
Correct.
So hopefully that helps to clear up And then we will post this playback on the website. So if you need to come back and reference that explanation, thank you, Shane, for adding that extra to it.
Sure. No, appreciate you breaking in there. That's all. It's a touchy subject. And guys, the notes that I have on this subject that I'm reading go all the way back to 2017. So this hasn't changed. I mean, this is that 2017 is a good 5 to 6, well, 6 years ago, quite honestly, over 6 years ago, based on the data I have on here. So it's not a new thing that's going on. P-card security, eliminating fraud. It's just kind of all part of what's going on. But, when kind of get a feel for why the suppliers are requesting it, why we can't store that particular number. And then we have had success over the last 6 years for some of our suppliers to reach out and say, hey, you're getting a secure transaction from EVA. We have a upfront secure login that's SEC 525 compliant. SEC 501 compliant. A transaction from EVA with a P card on it, that P card is absolutely associated with that user. We've done a lot of that upfront security. Sometimes it's just talking to that supplier and letting them know that. Because again, remember, a lot of the folks that are running these transactions for you are customer service reps. And sales reps who, they get given a process on their end, and, they're dealing with the general public. They're dealing with different government systems, potentially, certainly across the United States and across the world in some cases. Every system is different. So, if they get a system put in place and they need to run a card and they need the CVV code, that's likely why they're reaching out, because that's what they've been told to do. So again, a lot of nuance and things to that, but it again is there to reduce fraud. And hopefully have that transaction be secure, which we're absolutely doing up front in EVA. And sometimes it's just making the supplier aware of that. And even when you make them aware of it, it may not change their process at all. So it may just be something you'll have to do a business process with that supplier for P-card transactions to make sure they get that CVV code. So good stuff. All right, I want to shift out of that topic, and let's talk about buying off contract, or buying off specifically contract catalog line items. We're going to, I think as we go into October, there's going to be some meetings coming up as we go into the October user group, as we go into the forum. You're likely to hear us talk contract data loads, shopping off contract line items, shopping off punch out contracts. You're going to start hearing a lot of messaging around this. I know those of you that if you're a point of contact or you're responsible at your organization for talking to your DPS account executive, that this is something that has been stressed, getting your contracts loaded into EVA, and beyond even just getting like the contract itself loaded, getting contract line items loaded, or having a punch out implemented, because we know we get very good details about a contract, what's on the contract, how much those items or services cost. And then on our purchase orders, where you get very consistent line items, prices, and that ability to tie those purchases directly back to a contract, so we can see that impact. And I think we're going to I know over the next several weeks, October through November, this is going to be a big topic of conversation. You're going to keep hearing more and more and more of this. So what I wanted to do today is not focus necessarily about the back end and loading contracts and getting items out there, but really on the shopping side, and shopping for contracts, and how I shop off of a contract. Now, I know I've seen the data. I'm very well aware of it. I know that not a lot of or not every single one of our contracts that's loaded in the system is shoppable. Some are. I think you guys that have used the supply room, punch out for office products, Grainger and some of the various, MRO punch outs, the vehicle punch out that's out there for statewide vehicle purchases. Then some of the Vita things that are out there, some of the things where you can get, IT peripherals or software like SHI, which is Software House International, or CDWG, where you've got punch outs in place. Or you've got, some statewide contracts where there are some set line items where, you can do purchasing from. So I know there's some out there, but we know not everything's great. And we're spending a lot of time, or getting ready to spend a lot of time here at DGS and at DPS and at Vita as well, to make sure we have, particularly for our state contracts, as many of our contracts as humanly possible, loaded up and able to be easily shopped without having to hand key or do a non-catalog purchase, hand keying those in. But again, from an end user perspective, we've got a couple ways that we can shop off a contract. And the first is very simply going, in between, depending on what your items are in your menu. Most everybody, from your base end user who has the ability to do requisitioning, they can go to shop and they can hit search products. All right. And from here, if we can shop specific contracts, if I know, and again, keeping in mind I'm in UAT, if I know the particular name of that contract, maybe even by commodity or supplier, I can do some filtering and some searching. Get rid of that search. The other thing is I can search directly for a product. So in this case, again, just giving an example, I can search for, I'm doing widgets here. So if I search for widget, I have widgets. There we go. So in this case, I search for widgets. I get a lot of options, but these three items right here that are the commodity is football equipment, but I've got blue widgets, red widgets, and white widgets. And then you'll notice I've got a contract that is referenced here. I've got a contract that is referenced here. So if these are the widgets I want, I can do some searches, I can do some refining, and all I got to do is add to cart. I can adjust my quantities if I need to. So let's say I wanted, 10 of these. I can add that to my cart, and 5 of these, and I can add that to my cart. You'll notice my cart is over here building, and whoops, I just knocked out and let's get 4 of those and add it to my cart. So without even going in and reading any details, $10,000 worth of widgets. I can very quickly go in. As soon as I hit checkout from this screen, it takes me into a requisition. It wants me to make sure I do that accounting. And it brings those items into my shopping cart with the quantities I had. And then the contract, you'll notice the item type, it's coming off a catalog. And then the contract itself, and I'll show you this, if I dig into a line item here. The contract is associated with that line item. So, I don't have, I'm getting a very consistent description, item description. I can obviously update the quantity and delivery date, things like that. My supplier kind of locked in and picked for me. And then obviously that contract, if I want to see the details on that contract, anywhere that you see a link, you can click on it and, drive into the contract details itself. So I can get any more, maybe I need to see the other prices. If there's any documents, I don't have any associated with this. Again, keeping in mind I'm in UAT. If there are any contract documents I wanted to read, or just general information, the end date, all of this goes out to 2026, things like that, any other information about the contract. But again, that is one method for buying off contract, going into shop, doing a search, refining it by contract, refining it by supplier, finding those items and adding those directly to my cart. And then that way I'm not having to do the manual keying, and my contract number is referenced. I got that contract number reference on there. So that is one method. The other method if I know the contract, I can browse contracts, bring up those contracts. And again, I can do it by supplier. I've got filter options. I can do it by the contracting entity, you know, all sorts of different things, commodities, all sorts of things that I can, you know, narrow down my search for, but I'll just do widget scan. And I can hit search. And I see the statewide widgets contract come in. I also have a sole source one there as well. But the statewide widgets contract here is available. It's valid till 2026. I can simply click on that contract. And again, this launches that same summary screen we just looked at. You can check out the header and all that information, the documents tab. But one of the cool things I can do right out of this contract, if you hit other actions, I can create a requisition from contract items. If I click that option, I get taken to this screen. I can select, let's say I just want blue and white. I don't have to hit all the items. I can hit 1 or 2 or how many items you have. You get a little summary there. And I can hit create requisition from contract items. And that takes me into a requisition and adds those items in there. And then again, references my contract. So from an end user perspective, I just wanted to show you that. For those of you that are in contract administration, and you have taken the time and effort to get a punch-out catalog implemented or load your shoppable detailed contract line items, one of the things you need to think about if you're a contract administrator, contract officer, providing directions. How do I order off this contract? What's the easiest way to order off this contract? Maybe give folks just a quick little write-up. Log into Eva, go to shop, go to search, type in this title or description, search for this supplier, you know, and you should see 10 line items, 12 line items, 100 line items, whatever it is. Or go to contracts, browse contracts, find this contract, you know, give them, what is that? 2, 3, 4 steps. Help your end users get to these contracts and quickly get those items placed without having to manually key them. So just something to think about, something I wanted to show you guys today. We know there's a lot of different business scenarios. There's a lot of different ways that we're getting contract pricing. One of the things we're looking at tackling in October is variable priced line items. Think fuel. So I'm very excited again for our October user group meeting to potentially show you variable price line items and how that's going to work, and talk a little bit more about contract for our October meeting. So that kind of closes out our demo today. That also, I would argue, closes out our meeting today. So I will stop sharing and send it back to the panel screen and allow Kim to do any further wrap up that she'd like to do today.
We have just a couple questions that we're tackling. One of the things that got asked is, if the order is attached to a contract, do we still need to manually put the contract number in the external contract field?
No,
no,
do not.
Yep. So just like Shane showed, it's linked, and so that's there.
Yep.
And is there a way to do a confirming order through the shop feature for agency specific contracts?
So you're doing a confirming order on a contract?
Yes, and that was a question that came over from 2 different individuals, 3 different individuals.
Boy, that's a great thought. I would have to. So I'm looking now, guys.
Yeah, the confirming order, create confirming order in the drop down.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the confirming order is. Yeah, you're really locked in. You're not. That is going to be all non-catalog, but that is a great note.
Yep.
For us to look at, that we need to make contract catalog shopping available through the confirming order feature. That is a That is a great note for us. Right now, I just clicked on it real quick. I didn't share the screen. If you do confirming order, you're going to be hand keying all that. You don't have an option to drive over to the catalog, at least that I'm seeing. But that's a great note. We will look into that.
Yeah, so a couple people have popped that over. So hopefully that answers those questions that came over. So thank you guys for those. And let me just see through. How do you get the external contract to copy over when you copy a line item on a non-punch?
Right now you don't.
Order? Yeah.
Right now you don't. It is a very, very dumb field in the grand scheme of things. You can key that number in. You can't mass edit it. It doesn't copy. These are all things that are bad. Now we're looking at addressing that. We floated a solution, quite honestly, by a higher education group, kind of say, hey, what if we did this? And they brought up some points that we're looking at, making sure you get, if you have to use an external contract number, that you can get it on your purchase order. That would be one. We obviously want to get that data on the purchase order, but also that you can mass edit it. We'd really like to get away also. Right now, the external contract number, you have to hand key it. That's bad. Because when you hand key things, what happens? We spell things wrong, or we spell things differently, and we don't have our references perfect. So there are some challenges that we took away from our conversation just last week that we are looking into to address that for those of you that have to use an external contract number for whatever reason. So we're still tackling that. But yeah, the external contract number field right now is kind of stupid. It's not very smart. And we're looking at making that better. Now, what we'd really like, particularly for those of you that are in executive branch, use the EVA contract module, get your contracts into EVA. Again, we're going to be coming out with some stuff to tackle variable price line items and some other things to make the contract module even that much more robust. So it should be an exciting October and November and early 2024 as we continue to make improvements in that area to allow you guys to track your contract spend better, track your contracts better, and then allow your end users. We want the shopping experience to be as easy as possible. And we really hope we're tracking towards that. So an exciting couple of weeks coming up in that area.
And Mel had a specific question about the McKesson contract. So we're going to have somebody follow up with you because that's very specific. So thank you for asking that question, and I will take that and have our catalog manager follow up with you to see if we can get. Yeah. Good
deal. And if we need to pull in the contract officer, our catalog manager, Sandy Stanley, she can do that for you too. So.
Perfect.
Great.
All right, guys. Well, that is going to wrap up our buyer user group for today. Shane, thank you for all the great information and for the demos. Great conversation around P cards. And then, of course, lots of excitement about being able to shop off catalogs and accessing things and tying those back within the purchase order so we get that full picture. And thanks to Barb and Tony for all the great behind the scene answering of questions. We had about 20 that were answered.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Feverishly
you guys rule.
Working.
You guys are the best.
Remember, there are QRGs out there publicly available on the EVA website, both for suppliers. So if you have questions about how does a supplier do this, or they're coming to you and asking that, you can always point them to those supplier training reference guides. And then, of course, you have access to the buyer QRGs and other types of training tools and tips directly off the EVA website. So remember to use those resources that are publicly available. The playback will come out to the buyer user group members through Constant Contact email, and we'll also post it on the EVA website either later today or tomorrow. So again, thank you guys so much for your time, attention, and attendance. Great conversation, and we'll see you in October. Have a great rest of your day.
Take care, guys.